All right, LO. Yeah.
Am I audible on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Starting in three, two. Growths come when you set a path in a way that makes you passionate and happy about, and constantly looking back from the past and seeking for new innovation to further pursue goals in doing things that they love within their lives. So several rebuttals towards their team. First of all, very first clarification here is that we are not debating on hedonism, but rather optimistic nihilism in within society. And they also talked about sustainability and how youth will make dumb choices. But first of all, exactly due to the rise of AI and the rise of technology, it is to increase the status of life, to live a better life, and making a better life to be much more accessible towards society. And also, if second thing here is that even if you are doing bad decisions, but everyone does all this kind of bad decision in their youth anyways. This kind of things that makes them to learn what they need to do when they grow older. And also they also talk about law, but law, exactly, law exists is for people to not go against the border. That's the point of law. Youth does not only think about breaking laws when they feel like the society is now the world is meaningless. It does not work that way. Okay. And also they talk about how when you when you're older enough, then you only do things that you want. But we say that regardless of how long it is, it's just your life, and you just it is your life, and you live a very short life. Just do whatever you want, because
Why?
you don't just do whatever you want, because you cannot, your life is short enough already. You cannot do what the people restrict you from doing. So yes, accepted.
If truly they are supposed to do whatever they want, wouldn't they just invest so much to their own profitable gain, their own selfish gain, and create instead a more hedonistic society where they seek to fulfill their own desires the most and destroy all future plans because they cannot sustain it?
We say that there's still people who find meanings from doing, like for instance, like environment advocate, like for instance, people who find passion in doing scientific research or whatnot. It's just doing what people want rather than getting the pressure from societal narrative. Just do things that you're passionate about. Even if there are people who do this kind of bad things, there's still people who are right now have their own passion in pursuing this kind of good things as well. Okay, now which will refer elaborate later. So what does optimistic nihilism look like? It looks like when younger people wish to explore the world, knowing that there's so much unknown beyond the borders and universe, unleash infinite possibilities to learn all these great things that enrich our recognition and matrix. Then when we reach a certain state in life where they feel so crushed by all the sufferings and challenges faced in life, feeling self at best, feeling how this world is just too large and I can't do anything because I'm not great enough, not being able to push for change, being such an ordinary person in life, in the world, knowing how tiny we are within this such gargantuan world, and thinking that we are so useless. Without us, the world and the earth and the system just runs the same, and nothing much will change. It is exactly so true. But when we grow into a older stage, like we just embrace it and accept how ordinary we are, and it's okay because everyone else are just the same. Tons of other people are just the same, and that's definitely likelihood of the rest of their life to be just how it is right now, but with not much huge changes for most ordinary people. In such a majority society of how this happening, where we are just being so ordinary, this sort of societal narrative of being optimistic nihilism, able to let ordinary people to accept who they are, to be optimistic in life, to continue to live on, doing what they love about, because life is just too short, and just live the fullest on what makes you happy. If we can live long doing things we love aside from our own job responsibilities, it is already good enough. And this is especially important in current society where you have so much different social movements calling for your attention, different social issues where the younger generation feel extremely pressured to achieve a certain goal and to achieve change, which eventually leads them to depression when they cannot achieve all this kind of change. So why is change and progress still likely to happen on our side of us? This is still likely how people still find meanings in doing larger things like environment, minority group advocate, or science exploration, and etc. Scientists and astronomers are aware that the world is so huge, they won't be able to reach places a few thousand million light years away. Everything is still meaningless anyways. It's just nature that exists, but there are still people who find passion from finding deeper meanings in for instance, dark matter, universe, planets and stars, aliens, or even philosophy, things like dark forest, etc., etc. Even if these things might be useless for other people, at least for these people who are studying all these kind of things, they find passion from doing so. These are people who find want to find the truth of the universe, interpreting from the way they want through their books, that through the documentation that they wish to form their own matrix. Of course, every ordinary person still interprets things differently with the way they want and things that they know. It's still okay. Change still happens across long history of humanity, where every individual back then contributes their parts to form how society is right now. The stance here is that with this narrative placed within society, the most important thing within this debate is to who creates the better action and outcomes for people. Because the only way for any impact to exist is how people will react to both sides' narratives. And why we are better to achieve to achieve this, that is because this narrative takes the best sides of both the optimistic and nihilism mindsets. The nihilism cushions people from inevitable failures. However, that optimism pushes people to not take it seriously, but also want to continue because it is meaningless to focus on that failure. Therefore, I don't care. I want to continue because it is what makes me happy. I want to continue, even if it does not make them happy. We see that on our side of her is the one that is more likely to opt out of the unhappy cycle and pushes people to not also burden themselves and do what makes them happy because they believe the negative in their lives is meaningless. So either they would opt out or they remain neutral, which we say still mitigates and outweighs all of government's case. First argument here is self-actualization. So it emphasizes on your own actions instead of the impacts that are out of your control. Your actions being like your 7-minute speech, and the impact being whether you won or lost the round. You assign meaning to the effort and the work that you put into, while disregarding the outcome of whether you lost or not. The world where your actions are done purely for your own gratification and satisfaction without needing the validation of others or being swayed by the circumstances of larger society. Incentives. Now people now is incentivized to pursue and find things that inherently brings you satisfaction in life instead of pandering to larger such social norms and feeling pressure to achieve a certain state in life, like having family, being wealthy, for instance, which are all common definition of meaning of success in life. This is so important, especially for youth nowadays that are increasingly pressured to do better, to clean up the mess and devastating effects that the older generation have left on the earth. Things like climate change, systematic discrimination. Comparison here is the world where the younger generation is able to find and pursue their own happiness within their own lives, live free from the pressure of the larger world. On their side, the younger generation will still be bombarded by various issues in life, and they will be able to make choice independent of that pressure. Now, with that being said, oppose.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. Welcoming DPM to the floor. Here.
Here. Give me a second to set up my timing. Also, a quick side note, please give me POIs verbally because I wouldn't be looking at chat. Thank you. All right. Let me set up my time. Right. This thing is not fitting. All right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. If I were to practice optimistic nihilism, I wouldn't be here debating this with complete hope and listening to the societal rules. I wouldn't be listening to the rules of today's debate. However, I'll be attacking people without any sort of equity because I'm doing what I think is correct, because I feel that nothing is meaningless in today's world. And therefore, I think this is what side opposition is trying to prove for. Now, what I would like to first ask side opposition once again, that what I trying to defending. They are saying that they are trying to defend people to live their lives, but we also want people to live their lives. But what we're doing differently is that people will live their lives with societal consensus, not doing things whatever they like without any rules, because it's actually dangerous, which I'll further prove in my points later. But first, I would like to again clarify once again that youth, and I want to they have completely not engaged on how this is specific to youth, because we need to understand that we are debating on youth, and Marcus has given you a great characterization of why this is not a good value on youth, because we need to understand, yes, we do agree that this is a doable ideology. But the problem is because it's implemented and practiced on youth. And the problem is that youth haven't been able to see the world enough to come to this kind of conclusion. Imagine a baby that goes out and thinks that this world is completely hopeless. They do not want to drink milk, they do not want to eat food, but they think that, oh, I just want to do this person, I want to eat my toys because I think that that's the most meaningful thing to us. Do you think that's even realistic? And do you think that even makes sense to today's world? I don't think so, Judge. But however, so I don't think so. And next, they are saying that, oh, these kind of views can come to self-actualization. But first, let me ask you a question and simple thing, and I would like to put it to side opposition. Can you prove that how these kind of youth have these kind of capabilities to these kind of big ideologies? How can they save the world? How can they like save this universe suddenly? How can suddenly helping the environment? How can suddenly going to space, exploring science be something that is meaningful to them? Because to them this universe is already meaningless. So why in the world will they want to explore this universe? Where is the incentive for them to do so? And however, they want and also coming from first, they say that they're not trying to promote hedonism. But unless they can prove to us that hedonism wouldn't happen if people will have no more hope and see no meaning in societal rules, then therefore I don't think any benefits they say should be credited. Because what we're trying to propose is that rather than having an individual consensus of own meaning and setting your own goals, we want to teach them at least a basic guidance of the society in order for them to not come with this kind of antisocial personality disorder, which is extremely harmful to the society itself, which I will further explain. But before I move into my arguments, I would like to once again branch off to Marcus's argument, which I think that this thing is enough to win us the debate. First is that we're saying that, on the minorities arguments, just purely on that, we want to explain to you that these kind of minorities will actually feel like it's meaningless because it means that they will want to succumb to this structural barrier because they feel like there's no point of fighting anymore for today's world. I'll take a PI later. And they don't think that there's any meaning to fight for their rights because they think, I just succumb to this kind of world, and therefore it will cause a loss of culture and loss of preservation of their own kind of traditions and also their own kind of identity. Yes, I'll take your PI.
Why is it that every single young individual inherently going to find meaning in taking drugs and doing bad things?
That is even more prevalent in your side because you have said that, people will want to do their own things, so therefore they will feel, if they think meaning is drugs and alcohol, then they'll do it. But in our, we have a basic guideline, so therefore I think that it's more if it's better on our side. So I don't see where this POI is coming from. Never mind. I think like it's time for me to move into my points because okay, now on to my first argument of that in the importance of meaning to the universe. Now, 3 parts to my argument. First, it will cause people to be constantly hopeful and optimistic. Youth is a symbol of hope and optimism. So therefore, why this is important is because happiness is subjective. You cannot say that, one person happiness equals everything. I can be happy because I can win this round, but the opposite wouldn't be happy because they don't feel the need and they don't see the meaning in today's life based on this motion. Second, is that it gives you motivation in half time. Desperate times need desperate measures. And in this world where this kind of optimism, this kind of nihilism and this kind of regressive mindset is being such a prevalent thing, it's important for people to constantly have hope and constantly feel that there's meaning in this universe, because meaning is what will drive you to and propel you forward in order for you to reach higher goals and to reach self-actualization, which I would like to prove to you, Judge, that it's a direct counter to whatever they say is self-actualization, because we can do what they have, we can co-op to that, because we can see the entire picture, we're able to be more hopeful, and therefore we're able to self-actualize ourselves better because we have a basic understanding of the world, and also we'll feel more optimistic to constantly push ourselves forward. Third, it will give us more perseverance and stronger people, because people will feel like, yes, there's a final meaning, so I wouldn't be able, and I wouldn't see like the future is completely black. However, I'll see a beautiful picture and I want to chase that in moving forward. Now, second part of my argument, people want to find the absolute meaning. Why this pursuit of meaning is so important? Because of 2 parts. One is that it gives a constant drive that pushes people to face challenges. When people face challenges, they want to feel like, I want to give up, because they know that, there's a final meaning to today's universe and I want to get that, I want to achieve that amount of happiness. And 2 is that it acts like, for example, if you want to take an analogy, it's like a care for the donkey. The donkey may feel, I'm tired, but I see this final care, which is the meaning, and I will constantly want to change it. And I think that side opposition has failed to prove to you why this doesn't exist. Third is that it promotes development. Why? Because of 3 reasons, 3 impacts. 1, it gives a better quality of life because people will be able to see infrastructure, people will see the importance of developing. 2, it gives a better environment, and 3, it makes people more willing to contribute because people they know that the universe itself has meaning, not only they themselves is the meaning. Now, onto my third argument, which I think is very, very important, and Judge, you should credit this, is that it will promote individualistic people. Now, why this is true? Because of wrong and immature interpretation, because the most important thing, that these kind of things a lot of times is propelled because of social media presence. People are being easily mind watched, and therefore like opposition will be brainwashing you to believe in this kind of ideology. So people have not enough experience, and second, people have isolated mindsets which cause harmful actions, which is rebellious to society. For example, even you don't want to say taking drugs and crimes, vandalism, people going to in the class not going to listen to the teacher because thinking, I don't want to do what I am, I'm gonna do my thing, and I think that's not even correct. So next, it's a low sustainability because it will create easier conflict, because everyone has different meaning. There's no standard rule in this society. There's no societal consensus. I may think that it's right for me to kill a person because I feel that, oh, it's the most meaningful thing to me, but the society doesn't think so. So therefore, it will cause a very chaotic society, which I don't think that is what opposition wants to achieve at all. Now, moving to my impacts, Judge. Now, 6 impacts to my argument. First, it will lose societal peace and unity because they won't have a standard and uniform understanding of today's world, and they won't have the same meaning of life as everyone. 2, it's the importance of standard understanding, which is very, very important, because without a common goal, there's no way a country can progress, and there's no way that the entire world can progress. And it will cause stagnancy, it will cause people to regress, and it will cause people to further fail in their lives and not able to achieve any sort of self-actualization. Third, it will cause a less charitable society because people will be furthermore selfish, because people will only see the importance and need themselves. They only base their life on their whatever so-called meaning, but not the benefit or not for the charity of the entire world as a whole, which is what it will happen in opposition side. And fourth is that it will cause a low sustainability because, one, it will create easier conflict that will have different meaning, because there's no way you can sustain a society when everyone is living their own bubbles, but they're not going to be merging together. However, they'll be fighting against and will causing an endless conflicts and wars in between themselves. And last but not least, is the fifth argument, which is a fifth point, which says it will create their own meaning and culture will be lost, which I will have proven to you, because they think that my own meaning of life is just to live here. I just want to sleep. I wouldn't want to fight for my rights anymore. I wouldn't want to fight for the minorities, and therefore this is extremely detrimental for the minorities who has already been diminished, and therefore this will cause them to further lose their rights and lose their drive to fight for the benefits and their rights for themselves. Never been so proud to propose for the rights and for the optimistic and for the fight of the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DPM. Welcoming to the floor, Diallo. You're here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yep.
Thank you. POS verbally. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel recognize the fact that the government has hinged our entire case today in this debate on an extremely negative and unfair case. The very reason that the entire case is hinged upon the fact that the default that the people in the youth refer to is doing drugs and going against laws, right? We think that this is inherently untrue, right? Because people do have a natural tendency of wanting to do good things, right? As long as the world that they grew up with, as they have their parents who give them good values, and they are able to find meaning in different things. This looks like people wanting to fight for climate change because that is what they feel gives meaning to their life. This looks like people wanting to be to do better, to do charity work, because to them that is what brings meaning to their own life, right? The meaning of life cannot be inherently. The government cannot completely fiat the fact that the meaning of life that these children have are going to instantly become doing drugs and laws, right? Because I think even in status quo, if you want to state the fact that children are going to be naive, it's it applies to everything, right? It's not going just because you have optimism nihilism that suddenly children will all want to do drugs, right? Because that's inherently untrue. Because of the fact that even laws and laws do exist, and the consequence of action is not completely eradicated just because of the narrative, right? People will still have to abide by laws. That means the most extreme cases and the most extreme examples that the government has given already do not stand, because of the fact that it's unlikely that people have the incentive to want to be thrown into jail in the first place, right? Secondly, the government cannot capitalize on the fact that the youth are going to be extremely naive. That recognize brought up the fact that the example of a baby, right? I think we want to all recognize that is not who we're going to be talking about. We're not talking about little children, maybe 5-year-olds that could not comprehend anything, right? Obviously, this doesn't matter because no matter what narrative, they all are unable to understand it, right? We think that youth can be broader. It can look like things like the Generation Z, right? Things like people who are in their 20+ years old, to the early 30s, right? We think that youth can be people who have an inherent understanding, right? They cannot say that they are going to be extremely naive, because that is going to be symmetrical on their side, right? So if they want to talk about people getting into drugs on their side, if the youth are that naive, then they will get into drugs on their side as well, because it's not because of the inherent narrative. No, thank you. It's not because of inherent narrative, because of them being naive, right? Then we tell you about why, even if what they say is true, why exclusively the youth that should have this narrative in their mind, right? It's because it is even my first speaker already given to you. Is it you who inherently are should have a greater control and greater sense of autonomy over their own actions, because of the fact that they face extreme amounts of societal pressure. Things like the older generation leaving behind an extremely detrimental earth, that climate movement that have to be propagated by the younger generation, because of the fact that older generation has left it to us. Systematic oppression that already exists in the system prior to our generation. These are the type of societal pressures that and things that the younger generation is like pressure to solve on our side. That's why we think exclusively having optimism, nihilism is better, right? Where they can decide whether or not this is something that they want to fight for, right? We tell you that the biggest thing about how societal change, we've already told you how societal change still exists, right? Because recognize that there is going to be people who care about these type of societal issues, right? Where people find meaning in fighting for like climate change, where people find meaning in fighting for their rights, right? Imagine yourself as a queer person, you are able to inherently find meaning in forming a community and being able to fight for their rights, right? The difference is the fact that you no longer place any emphasis on whether the world, no thank you, but on whether the world is actually going to give you an impact, right? You no longer place emphasis on whether or not is the country actually going to pass these laws? Is the country actually able to pass these policies? What you find meaning in is inherently the pursuit on working towards your goal. The goal is no longer the emphasis, but it's the fact that you find satisfaction and gratification in working towards that goal, in finding that meaning in life. Before I move on, sure.
Understand that it's not mutually exclusive. It's not mutually exclusive. Our side still has goals to strive to.
Yeah, exactly. But we tell you why we better achieve that on our side, because you no longer place the emphasis on the impacts, right? Because recognize in current society, people are constantly demotivated by the fact that like climate change is getting worse. There are scientists who are constantly saying that if you do not solve it within the next 5 years, the earth is going to die. There are people getting oppressed on the streets every day. These are the facts that the younger generation are constantly being bombarded with, right? This is why they have a constant pressure or have like a constant depressive episode, because they realize that nothing is changing in the world, right? Only through optimistic nihilism, when they no longer place an emphasis on whether or not this is going to change something, but actually focus on the pursuit of change itself, are you able to prevent people from actually like going into depressive episodes, right? This goes into our second point about how like why are we able to deal with failure, whether it is in terms of societal change or even just on your daily life, right? Because optimism nihilism is going to be the most optimal way of viewing life, because when it comes down to it, feeling like your failures weren't that big of a deal, feeling that you not actually winning that debate competition is going to be but instead continue trying, because you find meaning in actually working towards, right? You find things like you find meaning in working towards becoming a better debater. You work meaning towards like improving your speeches instead of whether or not the judge actually gave you the win or not, because that is something, that impact that is inherently out of your control, and it's not something that should be like should not be something that you inherently contend with when you bring out your own meaning of life, right? Because structurally, it's likely to not feel the pain of failure as someone who is not optimistic or size one of both optimism and nihilism. Because if you're nihilistic, you probably wouldn't understand the need to do something in the first place. However, we tell you that optimism also leads to further worsening of mental health, because being positive is a very thin line. A realistic human wouldn't just go with every single failure thinking they can still do it. But the difference on our side is that we view it as it doesn't matter if I fail or not. As long as I am doing this, as long as I have like self-actualization, as long as I am in the process of like doing this, as long as like I put my entire soul and hard work and effort into it, that is what brings me happiness. It is not the end goal or the achievement that I get. It's not the impact or whether or not the judge has given me that win or not. It's the pursuit of actually working towards that goal. Why this is important? Because they are going to be more focused on what actually makes them happy and brings fulfillment to them in the moment. Because within status quo, the pressure to clean up our earth, to become a doctor for your parents, to actually strive for like legislation that actually change the world is extremely large. All the narratives have to supersede the happiness of the youth. Therefore, with the narrative, the idea of happiness and fulfillment is now focused on the action, your own autonomy and the things that you do, rather than that of your parents making you do this, or the fact that are you actually able to achieve that change or not. You are doing this because you like the state of it, because you inherently find meaning on it yourself, because it what brings you happiness. Even if we face failure, the worst case on our side is that we feel disappointed and depressed about something you are most likely opt out on, in comparison to Prof's best case of somehow continuing even if it severely depresses me. So we tell you that the pressure that the governments want to talk about is a bad thing, right? Because recognizing the fact that like all these societal issues that they say are not going to be that easily going to be changed. It's an uphill battle against people who are conservative, against the impending doom of climate change. And people are inherently going to become more depressed the more they try to stay optimistic, the more they try to strive for the actual progress, to strive for actual impacts, right? We tell you that the only way that people can want to have longevity or sustainability that they want to talk about is that people recognize that all they can control is their own actions, and it's the actions that bring them happiness in life. And if that is what they decide to do, and the actions that they do are ones that are going to contribute to societal change, then we think that is even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Diallo. Welcoming to the floor, Government With. Here.
Timing for it to be clear. Am I audible and visible?
Yep.
Yeah, give me a bit, Yeah, okay. 3, 2, 1. Optimistic nihilism is the ability of a person to create his own meaning after fully accepting that the universe is a large piece of meaningless. Tell me in which part of that sentence says that optimistic nihilism is a person that is able to find happiness only through the process without a goal and without achieving their own goal. Opposition fails to understand the emotion here and suddenly creates this image where nihilistic people are able to be happy only through process. That is not an emotion today, and you are being severely uncharitable here. So you're being so uncharitable that my jokes from my DLO have suddenly become something for you to bicker against. Please be more charitable here, right? We say that instead of trying to do this find your own meaning thing, we find meaning through society, right? This helps better. This is better for our youth in 4 layers. Now, the first layer, we have better development. Why is this so? No, understand that we are not pushing for a more optimistic goal-oriented society. You know, we search meaning through other people, through interactions, through our parents, through society, through societal consensus. We search for meaning rather than rejecting everything else and trying to create our own meaning on ourselves, right? Why is this better? 4 layers, as I've said before. Number 1, better development. What does this look like? This looks like, well, you say people who want to conserve the environment even more better, environmental conservationists, right? We have more of those people because we agree to that. We agree to a consensus that yes, the environment is dying, and we search this meaning from other people. We want to conserve it for other people that we find meaning in because of this constant agreement, right? Our interactions with our parents, our conversations, our debates here, research from this meaning and are able to create better conservationists because we have this constant interaction. We are able to find meaning from others rather than rejecting it all and finding it ourselves, right? Number 2, why is this less destructive instead, right? Because look at your side. You reject everything else and you want to center it all around yourself. Sure, you can also say that, oh, I value the environment. But what will this look like even more? This looks like you rejecting your parents' ideas, you rejecting the school's ideas, and instead trying to rely on yourself and find your own meaning. What does this look like? This looks like rebellion, which is rampant in today's youth. Drug use. Look at America. I'll be honest, in every 5 people, 1 person that smokes pot. Everyone likes to do drugs because that's trendy. And when you reject everything else and you try to find meaning on your own, what does this look like? This looks like you following trends that are destructive. Like, well, constantly smoking pot and not paying attention to your academics because that's not that's
POI.
what's trendy, right? Yeah, sure. Let's take a POI.
If you say that there is inherent social pressure to make sure that people actually care about the environment, then shouldn't the trends actually exist on your side be the fact that like there are people being pressured to care about the environment and not do drugs?
Wait, what? No. What? Yes, people, because of this pressure that we create, even what the hell? Okay, forget it. Okay, so we'll have better development because we still have a fallback, right? We are able to ensure that through the societal consensus, we are able to have a tried and true path in which we can do whatever we can do, what is tried and true. We have at least a mediocre chance at success. We are able to maintain that at the very least I have something to fall back on, rather than finding this meaning that is so extreme, like a YOLO lifestyle, trying to be the next Zuckerberg and unable to fail to do so, and then end up broke with nothing to do because simply I have not, this path is not tried and true, and I cannot guarantee my own success, right? Now, on the second layer on why is this better for the youth, there is less risk. This is a more fair way of philosophy. Understand that when you reach a meaning through societal consensus, this societal consensus is often something fair, right? This looks like something like, oh, more people should become doctors, more people should become more charitable and try to conserve the environment. These goals, these meanings are often more prevalent in our side because we try to reach these meanings through society, and through this, everyone can achieve these goals because, well, it is a fair goal because society has agreed to it. Rather than trying to find your own meaning, this looks like rich people being able to fulfill their own meaning better because they have the capital to fulfill their own meaning, whereas the poor people constantly suffer because they don't have their own means, they don't know the ways to fulfill their own meaning, and instead constantly wallow in depression and suffering, right? Because they simply cannot have the capital to reach it, right? And then on the fourth tier, we are more sustainable. Why is this true, right? Understand that only through societal consensus we are able to preserve a better love for society and culture, which is especially important for minorities, because minorities do not get, when minorities reject this culture and try to find their own meaning within themselves, they often reject culture that is so important to them. This conservation of culture for minorities that are constantly at threat now faces to lose even more because their own people, their own community rejects them. What happens? This creates a loss of culture, this creates a loss of tradition, and this creates less people trying to fight for equality because even their own people reject it, right? And secondly, there will be less chance of conflict. Understand that on your side, when you're optimism nihilist, you often have your own meaning, right? Everyone has their own meaning, and when everyone has their own meaning, people argue on their best way to achieve it. People argue on which side should get the most benefit. And what does this look like? This looks like a more conflicted society with individualism, and this creates a society which is less harmonious and unable to progress, even worse, right? Compared to us on our side, we are able to create better progress because we agree on these specific values, we agree on these specific meanings, these specific ways to find meaning, and then continue on that, develop better and better. We are able to conserve the environment purely because of the way that the scientists say the world will end in 5 years. Sure, now let's fight for the environment now. You're facing systematic racism and your parents constantly tell you about it. Because of this societal interaction with my parents, that I become a fighter for my own rights as a minority, right? These are the important things that opposition has failed to realize. The simple weighing here is that we are able to create a more fair society with less discrimination, and we are able to guarantee more supporters for the betterment of society, because rather than having an individualistic society with different meaning where people try to find their own meaning but often fail and change and then have nothing to fall back on, we're able to have a society where at the very least is mediocre, and at the very best constantly progresses and creates a new high. Never been prouder to propose.
Thank you, Government Whip. Welcoming Opposition Whip. Here.
Hello, am I visible and audible?
Yep.
Okay. Give me a few seconds. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. And everything everywhere all at once. The main villain, Joy. She says nothing matters in a sullen tone. However, in the climax, she says nothing matters in a happy, joyful, triumphant way. This highlights the idea that nihilism and optimism can coexist. You can feel that certain things don't matter, but your actions are what can bring you the most fulfillment at the end of the day. The way they lose is simple. They completely mischaracterize to optimistic nihilism as toxic hedonism. Some strategic calls throughout their speeches. It's pretty contradictory because they try to tell you that children and youth could never understand what exactly is like optimistic nihilism. However, in the same breath, they say individualism would absolutely take over the youth's interpretation. From their second speaker, they were the ones that ran the wrong case and squirreled the motion. They asked, what part of creating your own meaning equals to happiness? This is extremely, extremely simple. If you feel like nothing matters in the grand scheme of things, might as well be optimistic and do what makes you happy with the people you want to. That is the world that Prop does not have and doesn't even paint a world of their own. We tell you that if they want to concede to social media and actually have other we tell you that they concede to social media being an active thing within society and actually have other checks and balances within their lives as well. For example, your friends, your family, all of which can act as check and balances to prevent you from going too far. For example, like taking drugs, which is their entire counterfactual. Furthermore, if they tell you that children are likely going to break laws and be a danger to society, this is extremely uncharitable to our side of the house. This is because children, even if extremely irrational, they will still understand and want to have good relationships, because at the end of the day, if you want to be happy and if you want to like have any sort of self-preservation, you would actively want to have like good relationships as well, because how are you actively going to survive anyway? Okay, they are talking about hedonism, not optimistic nihilism. Here's the clarification. The younger generation are the smartest they've ever been, especially in the 21st century. They know how to discern between what is okay and what is not. Because even if they are independent and self-oriented, they understand they shouldn't hit strangers because they wouldn't like it. They wouldn't just rob a bank just because they feel like it. It would more likely think on our side that committing these crimes are so extremely pointless. Prop runs on the idea that we are hedonistic and would break the laws for our own satisfaction, which is the bulk of their case and extremely uncharitable. Let me tell you what exactly they are lacking. The downfall in their case is the lack of counterfactual from their side. They cannot just run a negative case and expect to win. Their entire case is harping on hedonism being so bad that children and the youth would commit crimes, which we've already proven to you there's a distinction between. They need to tell you panel, what narrative they actually want to take over, because we've already brought to you extensive analysis that people are able to self-actualize from first and given you extensive impacting towards how this will actively impact society and how it actively impacts the youth and how it directly ties into societal change. They do not prove how we cross a threshold of harm that ties into optimistic hedonism, like nihilism. Do not let them win on a negative case. Two clashes within this speech. Firstly, on who gets better self-actualization for the youth, and secondly, who gets better societal change. Firstly, on who gets better self-actualization for the youth. They tell you that the people wouldn't want to achieve anything because nothing matters. The strategic errors within this substantive is simple. They completely mischaracterize to you how it even looks like. That is precisely why it is called positive nihilism, not hedonism, and not any sort of other way. None of their points still stand on the simple basis because responding to this substantive, let's be extremely charitable and engage in all of their best cases. Even if we engage within their best case, that sure, it is hedonism. We tell you that in our worst case, at least we believe that they actively are going to do what they want. Natural empathy still would exist. And they are able to still achieve great things because they believe it's kind of pointless to do anything else that they don't like to do. Furthermore, in their own non-existent positive substantive, that they are going to be obedient to their children and authority. They say they wouldn't stay put anyways because youth are still likely going to rebel. Furthermore, that there's a complete logical link missing. For example, the bulk of their case of you suddenly wanting people to take drugs and alcohol. You do not know that negative actions within the status quo still exist, right? Things like information, things like talks in schools, check and balances still exist. Extremely basic empathy and self-preservation still exists. The feeling of wanting to do the best for yourself from your basic instincts still exists. Prop needs to read the info slide. At the end of the day, positive nihilism is still optimistic, but therefore you're still going to want to do the best thing for yourself. Furthermore, let's flip their case. Drugs were never the comparative. We tell you that the more realistic view for youth to actually see is that things like failure don't really matter that much. Why? Because we've already told you youth will be more independent with the way society evolves to be more independent. But we tell you that that's okay insofar as they actually take up the essence of what optimistic nihilism looks like, which is creating their own meaning and be happy. And sure.
If the focus of individuals on your side will be on themselves and self-preservation, why would they do things that actually reserve problems like structural racism and climate change, especially when they concede that these things cause burnout and make you feel depressed?
We've already clearly told you that because they find fulfillment in actively combating justice, that is their own subjective truth that they want to achieve. We just simply do not understand the idea that proposition tries to harp on the idea that people just wouldn't care about these things. If you are a person that finds fulfillment in this, you're still going to do it anyway. This still outweighs everything they try to say. What is the weighing here? What makes people happy is not the end, not the ending outcome. It's always the experience that makes people happy. We tell you that the weighing is the idea that no matter what, basic empathy will still outweigh wanting to do bad actions. Bad behavior, especially applied to youth, will always have check and balances. The basic value judgment of this is youth being able to do what makes them happy and not shackled by things like adults pressuring you to be to be doctors. The weighing is we protect the most vulnerable and the majority of the youth. And secondly, on a quick clash of who gets better societal change, they try to say that they are never able to get change because they don't ever think about it. This is the bare bones response that they've brought to us. We've already taken all this down within the second speaker, but a couple of engagements but even if we engage in their extremely unrealistic and charitable stance, optimism nihilism is the idea that you're able to create your own meaning in life. Prop needs to read the info slide. Secondly, even if you don't find meaning in the feeling of suffering, for example, going to jail, getting a hangover from drinking, is still something repulsive because you're still discomforted by it. Even if you don't care about this discomfort, why would you want to be in that state anyway? It's the idea that you don't care, that's why you want to optimistically, because like nothing matters. That's why you want to opt into something that actually makes you feel more comforted. With that, end my speech.
Thank you, Opposition Whip. Welcoming to this stage, I'll reply. You're here.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Government loses its debate today on 4 reasons. 1, the extremely unfair characterization that only pictures the extreme and only acts on the basis of extremely negative values inherently being exclusive to only opposition side. They talked about how kids will instantly turn to things like drugs and like not abiding by the law, which I already told you that is a contingent upon the naivety of children in the first place, right? It's unlikely that completely the social norms will completely disappear, and there are still going to be things like children being discouraged to do like things like smoking, to go into drugs, right? You also have things like laws, right? We think that people inherently have the incentive themselves not want to be thrown into jail, to not want to like be fined a bunch of money because of the fact, even if they find no meaning in life, these are things are inherently things that go against their own benefit, which we think is extremely unlikely to be the case on their side, right? Secondly, there are two characterizations that came out, right? Firstly, on the fact that they also completely lack the counterfactual, right? They completely lack the counterfactual on how their world will actually look like, right? The only thing that could look like a counterfactual is what came out from their whip, which we think is already extremely late. But even taking the whip's counterfactual that came out from the counterfactual that came out from the whip is inherently contradictory, because recognize what they said is that they want people to follow the trends, right? They want people to be affected by societal pressure, because of the fact that like societal pressure is the one that like makes them do good values, right? But in the same breath, they tell us that on opposition side, the trend is to get into smoking and to get into like drugs, right? We think that's an inherent contradiction, and it makes you realize that the harm of things like people doing drugs is not exclusive to op, right? Because if they want to say that the trend is going to be something that is negative, then that is something that exists on their side as well. Because of the fact that if you want people to if the trend is going to be getting into drugs, the societal pressure that people who don't have optimistic nihility adhere to is going to be getting into drugs, right? Secondly, about their point on people, like privileged people, right, also goes into that counterfactual that talks about like people finding meaning in a set values, right? Recognize the fact that in the current status quo, set values are likely going to look like things like getting a family, right? Things like getting a lot of money, things like becoming successful, right? So this inherently contradicts their own point on the fact that they want to say that we inherently only cater to privileged people, right? Because if you have a set amount of values that is inherently in status quo, that inherently is one that is needs monetary success, then they are the ones who are going to likely pander only to the privileged people, right? Four, they fail to engage with our analysis of sustainability, right, that they want to talk about why people are actually going to find the motivation to actually continue doing things like social change, to actually continue on in life, to actually work harder and put more effort, right? Because the only thing that they told to you, is because there is societal pressure on our side that people will be forced into doing climate change, right? We have told you it's extremely unlikely, because people are likely going to feel burnt out from all these social pressures. It's inherently only on our side, where people are able to find their own meaning, where people do not care about the impacts and the results of whether or not that change is achieved, where people still fight for that change purely because it brings themselves gratification and satisfaction. Do you reduce the chances of burnout? You reduce the chances of people becoming complacent and not caring about these becoming complacent and completely like not wanting to care about these issues at all, right? It's on our side where we give them the option and the choice to choose whether they want to opt into these things or not, out their own like incentives, right? What have we brought to you today, right? We told you about choice and autonomy and how it's so important for the youth to place the emphasis on their own actions instead of the impact that they give to us, because inherently the world is going to be unfair and it's not like unlikely going to cater to the wants and the needs of the you people, right? They can be optimistic and hope for a better future and hope for a country with less systemic racism and hope climate change gets better. It's unlikely that it's actually going to happen, right? Only when you have them emphasize on their own actions and things that they actually can't control, do you reduce the chances of these people falling into depression. And we also told you about how like it reduces, like it cushions your failure, right? Because inevitably, that you are not going to be able to achieve instantly all of these social change, all of these things that you actually want to achieve, right? It's only on our side where people actually just don't get complete burnout. Thank you.
Thank you, opposition reply. Welcoming government reply. Here.
Here. Give me a second. Okay. Okay. Give me a second to get my timer. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. First and foremost, Judge, I would like to once again state to you that optimistic nihilism doesn't equal to optimism, which side opposition has been trying to push time and time again. I would like to flag to you, Judge, that op makes this debate confusing when they assume that your own meaning is something that the climate and societal, when we explain to you that this is the only based on societal meaning, which they are trying to confuse you with their confusing examples, and they're trying to accuse us for being the team that's been confusing and contradictory. Now, let me deal with the two main accusations coming from Op Bench. One is about the negative case. We are the only team that gave you the any sort of proof on how improvement and development will be private on our side, and side opposition has failed to deal with it, and they've only been throwing out fancy technical words in order to counter this. Second is about they have been accusing us of not giving you counterfactual, but from first we have been telling you that we have given you that a structural society with guidelines and rules that we can all search the meaning for after they have enough experience and knowledge. Means that we support this sort of ideology, but we are not trying to implement this during youth, which I would like to reinstate to you again, that why that these kind of youth will be more prone to be opt into these kind of things is because that these people, if they don't like follow these kind of societal rules, then it will cause them to likely opt into more problematic behaviors, because that they realize all these kind of things are meaningless and they wouldn't want to follow the societal rules. Okay, panel. Now let me flag to you once again that why they are not unable to fulfill their burden, and just purely based on this one point, they're not going to take this debate, because their burden is what? Their burden is to try to prove to us that why a society without a common goal, why a society without any external meaning is good, why a society where people only believe in their own meaning is good. However, they've been trying to tell us that, oh, people can believe in countering climate change is a good thing. However, even if you want to be, we'll be very charitable here, and we'll tell you that, okay, even if this is their dreams and aspirations, it's a very niche case and it's not the truth, but in most times it's not the truth, because that if a person that doesn't care of the meaning of this world and universe, they wouldn't see the incentive to fight for this world, and they wouldn't see the incentive for them in order for them to want to change this world, because they only care about their own benefits and so on. Okay, Judge. Now let us be very charitable, and even we take the wrongful characterization of optimistic nihilism, it's still better on our side, because on our side we provide these kind of negative emotions, and at best, for example, even on their best case, they say that we have burnout, and even we have burnout, yes. However, we have social structures, we have support structures which helps to mitigate whatever harm they're trying to push forward. But however, on their case, because everyone sees no meaning in this life, everyone sees no meaning in helping any other one, support structures wouldn't be there, and people will only have themselves to hold hold on to when things get hard. So therefore, I don't see how that this even makes sense. Now, let me prove to you that why on our side that we are able to even mitigate any sort of we are able to mitigate more sort of mental health problems they're also trying to propel forward. Now, because of support structure, but however, on their side, they are making depression into a lifestyle because we have a society which is more supportive of itself as a whole because there are these kind of social consensus and the world believes have the same meaning. The meaning may it be we want people to be more happy, we want people to see meaning in life, we want people to have bigger dreams instead of their lives where I only care about myself and I do not care about what other people think and I do not want to believe in whatever other people think. Now, if we compare the best case and worst case, and let me prove to you that why we are still going to win this. Their best case and they are trying to build this all around is that yes, people will have burnout, but on our side, yes, we might have burnout, but however, we will be able to experience a different patterns of life, the different spectrums of life, and it will be able to provide them with a clearer understanding of this entire life, and we'll be able to have them for them to be able to choose whatever lifestyle they want better. But however, on our side of what is our best case that they have failed to engage on is that we get people a better quality of life for people and minorities, which I think is a very, very important thing that you should credit in today's debate, Judge. Now, taking all aside whatever accusation that it was put to us, just on the case that they have misunderstood this motion and they have been debating on the wrong problems and they have been asking themselves the same questions and they've been contradicting themselves, contradictory against the motion itself. I think that this is enough for side government to simply clearly take this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, reply. I thank both teams for the wonderful debate. Please cross floors, shake hands. We'll be giving the announcement for the results in the main room in a while. Thank you.
Thank you for the debate.
Thank you.
Everyone please exit the room because the judges need to do the deliberation. Yep. Yeah, judges stay here, please. Everyone else please exit. Thank you. We'll just wait until the recording is done at there's quite a lot of people here. Right. I think if judges don't mind, can you join me in room 3? Because I don't know if people are gonna join or not. So we'll just move to a different room.
Okay.
All right, room
On the way
3.
there.
Okay. Hi, Adya. The judges have moved to room 3 because there's a lot of people here. So
I'm so sorry, what was that?
we've moved to room 3 to deliberate because the recording is on and there's a few and like the
Oh, just give me one moment.